Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. This is a Ukraine War news update. First part thereof for the 9th of June 2025. We go to the Ukrainian general staff figures for the Russian losses for the day before. All the usual caveats apply. You can find them on the link in the description below. And by the way, I did a live stream yesterday for my hits and losses video, and it went on a bit longer because Andrew Perpetua came on the live stream randomly as I was going through the data, and then it became like a chat about what's going on in the war, what are the developments with Ukrainian drones, what's taking place on the front line. It's such a good live stream. Obviously it's my live stream, whatever. I'm not patting mine back, but I found it a fascinating conversation with Andrew, and the Ukrainians achieved loads of stuff the day before in terms of blowing up Russian targets within Russia. Loads of things on fire yesterday. It was a fairly hefty live stream, 2.5 hours or something like that, but my goodness, I think it's well worth checking out, so please do check that out. Even though it's yesterday's figures, there's a lot of information in there that I think will be useful for anyone who's interested, and they might have missed it because it wasn't on my video section. It would be my live stream section, so check out the live stream section for yesterday and that hits and losses video with Andrew Perpetua. Right, today's figures, a drop down in personnel to under 1,000. That is rare these days, but it's got to be, I think, signifying that the Russians, well, it's interesting because you get certain claims that the Russians are attacking really intensely in a whole bunch of places on the front line. I think the analyst brought out an image today with loads of circles where it's really active. You know, you got Sumy, Vovchansk, north of Kupiansk, just south of Kupiansk. Then you got Terny and Torska. And then you've got Bilarivka and just around the Serebryansky forest. And then you've got Chasiv Yar and Konstantinivka and Pokrovsk and Krakova direction. And, you know, you've got everywhere on the front line. And yet we have 970 personnel loss. Now, that's still a massive number. We must remember that we've got the situation where huge losses have been normalized. And 970 is only 30 away from 1,000, and so on and so forth. But it's a downtick from where we were months ago. So what is happening? Are the Russians getting ready for a big major push somewhere? Are they actually struggling with manpower in some of these places? They're attacking a lot of places, but they're stretched thin. Is it that the attacks are taking place with fewer people because they're attacking on motorbikes or maybe in groups of infantry of, I don't know, 5 to 10, rather than huge columns of 30 pieces of kit thrown at the Ukrainian defensive line? So, yeah, it may seem like things are really intense because there is lots of activity. We talked about this, I think, a week or so ago, where someone was saying, yeah, I think it might be an Andrew Perpetua. Yep, the number of attacks have gone up, but the people per attack has gone right down. So that could explain why there's 970 today. 4 tanks, 11 troop-carrying AFVs. They are both below the daily average. 42 artillery systems, still about double the daily average. They are still doing a very good job, the Ukrainians, of attriting the Russian defences in terms of, the Russian artillery equipment. 1 multiple launch rocket system and 123 vehicles and fuel tanks. So there are some fairly decent numbers there, artillery and vehicles in general, for the Ukrainians. Right, Andrew Perpetua then says, I'm working on a backlog, and we spoke about this yesterday in terms of, is he going to get his hits and losses videos out, or hits and losses sheets out, sorry. And those loss lists that I used to show every single day, but he's not done any for a couple of months, primarily because he's still working through a behemoth backlog. I don't know whether he will release the backlog. It'll be there in his databases. But I said, look, if nothing else, I will geekily go through ones from like April. I don't have a problem with that. I find them fascinating to look through. And I know a few of you are of a similar mindset. But he also then took us through his personnel loss statistics. Now, these are... So, okay, first of all, he said they kind of go like this, because you get floods of montages maybe on a particular day, or a unit puts a load of videos on one day, that might refer back to their activity for the last week or two, so on and so forth. So you don't get these flat lines, but you do get a trend line. So it's like spiking up and down, but the spiking up and down kind of goes up and then down to, and I think this is significant, to confirm the general staff data. So the general staff data, if we go back to here, and in fact, yes, so if we go and look at Dell's, hopefully this all makes sense to you. So Dell stats, which look at the general staff data over time, do have the personnel stats here as a I don't know why that has ended up there. Let's just make sure that goes. I think there's a bit of a glitch. Here we go. Okay, so here is the personnel graph for, I don't know why that blue square is in the middle. The personnel statistics for the course of the war. And what Andrew was saying is that you get these spikes up and down, but the trend line was going up towards and around winter. And then after winter, it's now coming back down, but it's back at a level that's still pretty significantly above where it used to be. And that's exactly what the general staff figures show. So it's really interesting that a guy or a team looking at videos on social media and from their different sources of, in this case, people, it's quite macabre, but people dying, and they compile these stats and they say, yeah, the averages we were looking at, I forget what he said the other day, but the averages shifted up to like 100 to 140 a day, or was it 140 to 180 a day, something like that. And now they've come back down to sort of 85 a day, but they used to be sort of 40 a day. In other words, it's still double what it was, but half of what it was over the winter period. And that shows exactly what this graph shows, that there were insanely heavy losses over the winter period as the Russians were pushing in a number of places, and they were throwing equipment and personnel at the Ukrainians. The Ukrainians were losing ground, but they were attriting the Russians at insane levels, and the cost per square kilometer for the Russians was incredible. Now that has dropped back down as the Russians seem to have somewhat not quite culminated. They're still clearly pushing on in different places, but I think that's partly because the Ukrainians are relying on drone lines. They don't have huge numbers of troops manning trench lines and defensive positions, and so the Russians can, with fewer troops, still overcome the Ukrainians in certain places, and they are taking as much land as they possibly can right now because they need to do it now. It's now or never type thing. So then Andrew says here, I'm working on a backlog this weekend and found a record day for video confirmed Russian killed in action. 552 killed on April the 12th. This is fascinating as well because, you know, you are looking at these numbers and you're thinking, right, 1,000 people a day. Let's say April probably would have been something like 1,300 people lost in a day. And you know, those are insanely high numbers. I mean, you know, is it realistic that the Russians are losing that? Well, of course, that's going to include dead, wounded, deserted, and POWs. But in a single day, Andrew Perpetua and his team have found videos to suggest that, and again, it won't necessarily mean that all those people were killed on that day, but you kind of iron these things out by him doing this every day. So on that particular day, 552 confirmed Russian deaths in a single day from videos. And that's, of course, going to be massively conservative because, you know, what percentage of people being killed on a 1,100 kilometer front line, or if you include the northern border, even more, what percentage of those people being killed are going to be caught on camera and then uploaded to social media? So, you know, 552 people being killed, caught on camera in a single day by Andrew Perpetua really does feed into these figures it's quite incredible. Now, it's still not done with the day, but probably won't increase much. Also, there were 275 vehicle losses that day, which is what I'm currently working through. 68 done, 207 to go. So 275 vehicle losses in a single day. That's why he hasn't got his loss lists out, because he has just so much work to do. Indeed, he said the final count was 562 personnel lost. So anyway, I just thought I'd throw that one in there. Now, there was this situation yesterday where the Russians were claiming that they had organized an exchange of fallen they were going to give over a bunch of Ukrainian dead soldiers. The Russians then released footage of the alleged refrigerated trucks with Ukrainian soldiers' bodies at the border for repatriation, manipulating this topic in its info space, says War Translated. Ukraine's coordination center says Russia's unilateral actions bringing bodies to the border for exchange violate agreed protocols. This has been a bit of an opportunity for the Russians to try and get some PR win here. But Budanov has come out, the intelligence chief for the Ukrainians, has come out and said Russia is playing dirty games with our dead soldiers. Russia says it lined up over 1,000 Ukrainian bodies for a handover, but Ukraine didn't show. That's what the Russians claim, and they had like all the press there, ready to talk about that and show it on TV and whatnot. But Kyiv called it a sick PR stunt. So that issue is rumbling on. I think Russia said they were going to give over 6,000 bodies in total. I don't know over what time period. I'm pretty sure that's what they were claiming. That's obviously a massive, massive number. We shall see. Okay, in terms of equipment, I often show you stuff like this, and my theory is that this is ridiculous, obviously, and it shows that the Russians are completely without adequate equipment, but it's not to say that you can't actually make something like this work and be useful. It's a bit like using motorcycles or quads at all. The idea is that they had to use them because of necessity, because they didn't have this correct equipment in the numbers they needed it, APCs and infantry mobility vehicles. But then they conveyed an advantage by using them. Well, actually, okay, they put a bathtub on the side of a motorcycle, so that this is a ridiculous sidecar situation. And we can laugh and joke about it, but if they can get troops from A to B, if they can use this to get supplies quite quickly to the contact line, then actually, if it does a job, it does a job. That's all you need to know. If it succeeds in doing its job, jobs are good. It's a bit like language. We can complain about people using language poorly or grammar and spelling poorly, but if they convey a message, if they succeed functionally with language, then you've done your job. It's not pretty, it's not great, but you've communicated the message you need to do. It's not pretty, it's not great, but that machine, if it does the job it needs to do, it does the job it needs to do. That's all you need to know. So, I'd be warned about laughing about stuff like this, although we can, knowing that it can still do a job. Okay. HIMARS strikes, I think 4 HIMARS missiles have struck Rilsk. That's in the Kursk region. It's a staging area for the Russians down to the Sumy area. It was their staging area for their repelling of the Ukrainians when they were in Kursk. And it gets routinely hit. Here is some imagery to suggest that something has been hit there. And to use 4 HIMARS, it's got to be fairly important. According to Russian sources, Ukraine launched a HIMARS strike on a cultural and recreation centre in Rilsk, Kursk region. Of course, they're not going to waste missiles on hitting a recreation centre, so you can rest assured it was being used as something else. Rilsk has seen a rise in Ukrainian strikes in recent weeks as it serves as a key staging area, there you go, for Russian forces attacking Sumy Oblast. And here, Tim White says, next we go to a popular destination this time of year for Ukraine's travelling drones, Rilsk in Kursk region. This time we think MLRS paid a visit, and it's believed they found a nice summer camp populated by military types. You got video evidence of the strike from from the side there. The video is a bit shaky and nondescript, so here are some photos as we just seen the scene of the scene. Z channel say 4 HIMARS were used. which seems a bit excessive, but it's definitely a prized hit, as there's no official word from Russia. One person is reportedly killed and 3 injured. So, as I say, if they've used 4 HIMARS to hit that, you can rest assured it was a high-value target. Now, Kursk region again, but down nearer to Tetkino. Tetkino is under a lot of pressure from the Ukrainians. There are claims that Andrew Perpetua saying yesterday that the Ukrainians might have taken Tetkino. We just don't know. But it has been surrounded, at least over the recent days and week maybe. Also, Andrew talked about why Tetkino is so important for that area. So you can go and check out yesterday's live stream to find out. Ukrainian artillery units are leveling Tetkino on the ground, according to firm's data. One would assume that is Ukrainian artillery. Obviously, all you can tell is that those are hotspots. And actually, some of these are hotspots within the Ukrainian areas, so it could be Ukrainians being hit by Russians. So, be slightly warned of these claims. But there's a lot of activity, shall we say, going on near Tetkino. Now, Russia is amassing its forces for a renewed offensive on Sumy, says Petro Andriushchenko, the head of the Center for Occupation Studies. So over the weekend, at least 10 new artillery units, an air defense system, and 40 plus trucks with troops and ammo were transferred from occupied Crimea to Kherson. Now, another interpretation, Max 25, I was going to use, but I wasn't sure whether he was sort of mistranslating Andriushchenko's claims. He said there's a huge amount of equipment going from sort of Crimea up to Sumy, and then this same video. But, 40 plus trucks and 10 artillery units and an air defense system isn't a huge amount, although it might be seen as comparatively huge. I mean, it's a significant amount of kit to be going from somewhere that probably needs that kit to somewhere else that needs that kit. And this is that whole blanket that's not big enough for the bed analogy I always use, whether it be trucks, whether it be ammunition, whether it be self-propelled guns or air defense systems. You've got the needs for, the need for my bed is that all parts of the bed are warm, but the blanket's not big enough. So I pull the blanket up to over here, and it exposes that area of the bed down there. So that's now cold. So you pull it back over there and it exposes another area of the bed. So that's the situation for the Russians with regard to their air defenses, but with regard to pretty much everything. And you can argue this for the Ukrainians too, which is that they don't have enough stuff to adequately defend or adequately attack in the manner that they want to, so they are having to rob Peter to pay Paul. So here they're robbing Crimea to pay Sumy, and you're seeing stuff taken out of Crimea that will essentially indicate that I'm sure Crimea is weaker, at least weaker than it was. Okay. We have, what else do we have? This is the aftermath of a Russian guided aerial bomb. So remember, the guided glide bombs for the Russians are still very active. This carb hit a residential area in Zaporizhia. Footage was released by Zaporizhia Regional Administration. Of course, they're not going to release the footage of the Russians hitting any military targets or installations, but they are certainly frequently hitting civilian infrastructure with those guided glide bombs. They aren't always the most accurate of precision guided munitions, the carbs and the FABs and whatnot. Right, then we're going to go on to some, quite frankly, astonishing statistics from last night in terms of distance strikes. We had, and there was warning of this, there was lots of chatter yesterday that last night was going to be the biggest attack on the Ukrainians of the war. There were rumours that maybe 600 drones were going to get sent into Ukraine, that this was going to be the real sort of retributive response to Operation Spiderweb and the Crimea Bridge and planes getting shot down and whatever. This was the big one last night. Although you'd had those huge ones a few nights previously, you had a bit of a night off the night before with 49 drones being sent. And yeah, then it was going to be the continuation of the retribution. Well, it does seem like that was the case, but Ukraine appears to have done a really bloody good job. I mean, really good job of taking out these missiles and drones, to the point where some people are going, oh, what does this mean? Have they suddenly got some new air defenses? What's going on here? So we were seeing sort of 30%, 33, a third, maybe between 30 and 40% of drones getting through routinely. Now, it could be that they were getting through, like I said before, because they were sending them against areas very close to the border or very close to the front line, Sloviansk, Kramatorsk, etc. So you have very short amount of time to react to the drones. You can only acquire them for a short period over your territory before they come down and blow up stuff, because you're really close to the front line, right? You can't spot them well over Ukrainian, Russian front line, or even if you do spot them on a radar, you can't shoot them down because you don't have mobile air defense teams in occupied territories, right? So you have to wait till they come over to your territory. But if they then do the terminal phase and dive down straight after they get over your territory, you have no time to shoot them down, and they blow up very close to the front lines. That's what could be underwriting the very poor interception rates, relatively speaking, that have been happening over the last month or so. But when they send them predominantly into places like Kyiv, there you start getting much better interception rates, because you've got well trained, experienced, founded air defense networks that have been doing the same kind of thing for ages now, operating around those cities, and you have the best air defense systems as well. So the interception rate possibly goes up when the Russians focus more on that. And the last few times they've done these massive drone attacks, they have tended to focus on the larger cities and towns. And then you get much longer to shoot them down, because they're traveling over Ukrainian airspace for like 5 hours before, it depends where they're aiming for, of course, before, thank you, Ivan, before they get shot down. Thank you, it's really kind. So here we have from 8 p.m. to 8 on the 8th of June to the morning of the 9th of June, Russia launched 499 air attack assets. So 479, this is now a new record, because I think it's 472 before. 479 Shahed drones and decoy drones, of which 460 were shot down. That is an absolutely phenomenal interception rate, given the sheer volume of drones. So that is 400 and so I'm just doing some maths just to let you know, that's 96% interception rate. That's absolutely astonishing. Then look at these missiles: 4 Kh-47M2 Kinzhal ballistic missiles out of 4 were shot down. 4 out of 4 hypersonic missiles shot down. 10 out of 10 Kh-101 cruise missiles shot down. 2 out of 3 Kh-22 cruise missiles. 2 out of 2 Kh-31P anti-radar missiles, and 1 out of 1 Kh-35 cruise missiles. So not very many ballistic missiles sent. So that's interesting. Why is that? You would if you could. You answer you can't. Why have they not sent them? But we have 4 hypersonic missiles, and all 4 were shot down. Every missile bar 1 was shot down last night. So that is 14, 17, 20 missiles, 19 were shot down. It's fantastic interception rates. It really is. That's incredible. To the point where people like Tim White says, I think we can safely assume Ukraine has received new batteries and maybe other technology. The extra F-16s help. They're good at missile hunting. More German IRIS-T air defense systems could be in action now. A month ago, an attack like this would have caused utter devastation. Something might have happened. It's weird that it's happened so quickly, though. Or it could be that the Russians were really just attacking those places that they have more consistently attacked previously, trying to overwhelm the air defences in, say, Kyiv, and the air defences held in Kyiv. They waste, rather, had they sent 479 drones against, like, Sloviansk, right? Sloviansk would have been absolutely battered, but they didn't. I don't know. A lot of speculation on my part. The whole sky in Sumy region is red with targets, they said last night. This has never happened before. That's a Konotop mayor, Artem Semenihikin. So Konotop is sort of over to the west from Tetkino into Ukrainian territory. It's quite a major, important hub, Konotop. Andrew was talking about that yesterday in the live stream. So I guess it's just interesting that they were all coming over Sumy, but evidently not aiming for Sumy. And again, Sumy is one of these places where had they sent all 479 drones into Sumy as the target there, they probably would have got most of them through and hit whatever they were going for. This looks like what the targets were. So, yep, Kyiv in the middle there. But you also have, let's see if I can, yeah. So I'm pretty sure that's Rivne back here. And not sure what that is. You got Ternopil, you got Khmelnytsky. Yeah, I don't know what place that is, but near Rivne. So, okay. And that's where you've got Kinzhal missiles by the looks of it. If I go down here, yeah, I would have thought that's Kinzhal there. So there's your Kinzhal missile. Cruise missiles going more into Kyiv, generally speaking. So Rivne was what seemed to be very much on the crosshairs for Russia. Russian drones target Rivne in the most extensive regional attack. One was injured, said Euromaidan Press. Ukraine endured a 6-hour air raid alert as Russia launched cruise missiles, ballistic missiles and drones from multiple directions, striking targets in Rivne, Kyiv and Kyiv Oblast. And here we see an air base was targeted there. So Russia reportedly launched 1 to 3 Kinzhals, well, we've heard 4 now, to strike an air base near Dubno, Rivne Oblast in Ukraine, according to firms. X-101s and Shaheds were also flying for a large strike on Dubno, a town in Rivne Oblast with 36,000 people, and a developing airbase with several facilities. So it looks like they're building an airbase there, and that has been struck by Kinzhals. Now, the claim was that 4 out of 4 Kinzhals were taken out. 1 cruise missile did get through. It could be a cruise missile that got through at this place. So if you look here, we do have cruise missiles coming by. They are the KH-101 cruise missiles, but actually it doesn't really go into all the different types of cruise missiles that we use. Oh, it looks like there was a missile sent against Odessa and something down here. One of these KPX-22. That's interesting, isn't it? So that is the... No, is that not an anti-ship missile? Something that's interesting. What is being targeted there? That could be Snake Island, actually. So it looks like they might have targeted Snake Island. No, is that too? Yeah, it could be. Anyway, wow. So a few random places around, but Rivne seems to. That could be Dubno there that has been targeted. That's the explosion. I don't know the transcription, whether I'm being accurate there. But anyway, when you are sending hypersonic missiles, of course, they're going to be coming down with a really steep trajectory, a ballistic parabolic trajectory. So if you shoot them down when they're coming down like this, if you intercept them, then they're still going to fall broadly around where they are aiming, depending on how far away from the target you shoot them down. You know, you've only got very limited time periods from when they start descending from the atmosphere down to here, and it's going to be very steep. So even if you do intercept all 4 hypersonic missiles, there are chances that all 4 hypersonic missiles are going to fall down in flames or whatever to broadly where they were aiming for anyway. So that's why you might have the claim that they shot down 4 hypersonic missiles and they're being burning at the airbase where they were targeting. Okay. Massive attack on Russia and Crimea. This is from drone bombers. So this is the Ukrainians attacking the Russians last night. So this particular time frame, which was 9:38 last night, so about 11:38 Kyiv time. So there could have been more stuff sent after this, but yet again, there's a lot of munitions being thrown at Oryol and Kursk region, towards Lipetsk. You've got Tambov, Saratov, you've got Voronezh, and going over Belgorod and some into Belgorod a little bit, one into Luhansk there, and then across the Zaporizhia region and Kherson region and into what looks like, where's that going to be? Henichesk is sort of there, so it's it's not quite Berdyansk, but it looks like it's on the coastline of the Sea of Azov there. So quite a lot of strikes. Now, I think the Ukrainians have had a really good week in terms of stuff that they have hit. And yesterday's live stream hits and losses video showed you so many things burning. We hear that last night the Ukrainians struck Savasleyka airfield in Nizhny Novgorod region. 2 units of enemy aircraft were hit, probably MiG-31s and Su-30 or 34 aircraft. The results of the combat operation are being clarified, says Max 25. A little bit more detail on this. So more from Savasleyka airfield. 20 odd explosions according to the locals. And there you can see drones flying in the sky above that airfield or on the way to that airfield. Actually, I've lost it. Anyway, it comes in a second. There it is. So there's the drone there, flies over. I don't play the sound because sometimes YouTube doesn't like the sound. And then there's smoke in the distance there. So this is an airfield. Kyiv Independent reports that Ukraine says it hit a Russian MiG-31 Su-30-34 fighter jets at the following attack on the airfield. The overnight strike targeted the Savasleyka airfield in Nizhny Novgorod region, which the Kremlin uses to launch MiG-31K jets armed with Kinzhal hypersonic missiles. So this could be the Ukrainians trying to stop the Russians from being able to send those Kinzhals into Ukraine. Of course, that's the best way of doing that. There's no point. Prevention's better than a cure. Preventing them launching the missiles is better than trying to shoot the missiles down when they're in the middle of the air, as I've just spoken to you about concerning that Dubno airbase. You need to blow up these missiles. You need to blow up the manufacturing facilities and then blow up the air bases and then blow up the depots, etc., etc. And they seem to be doing that. Now, at Savasleyka, I'm not going to show you this. I mean, all you're seeing is shaky camera, but this is a sizable explosion. The guys, these young lads with the camera, they are laughing, but I don't know whether it's that nervous laughter. Someone's saying that, they seem to be pleased that their local airbase is getting blown up. I don't know. I can't speak to that. Meanwhile, Savasleyka, where MiGs are based, is under attack by drones. There was a considerable explosion there, the sound of that. Then we are moving on to Cheboksary, really significant fire going on there. We're going to find out what that place is in a second, but I'll tell you what, you get to see a drone blow up on that point there. So there, that looks like a Luti drone going down right into where there's already big flames. So double hit on that that facility. It's a Russian plant, the VNIIR Progress plant in Cheboksary, approximately 1,000 kilometers from the front line. VNIIR Progress is producing components for S-300, 400, 500 air defense systems, T-90M tanks and Armata tanks, BMPs, Terminator, All-Antenn, Orion drones, and Su-34 aircraft. So this produces an awful lot of really important components by the sounds of it, and it has been hit fairly significantly there. As Anton Gerashenko says, General Staff claim the strike on Cheboksary was at the Progress plant. It produces, and further explosions going on there. It produces key components for heavy combat equipment, electromechanical drives, hydraulic systems, and control units. They are critically important for the operation of such platforms as self-propelled howitzers and Iskander missile systems. Without those systems, missiles are unable to reach their target. The Progress plant supplies guidance, stabilization, and flight control systems that are integrated into strike equipment at the assembly stage. A separate production line is the Comet-type modules. These are navigation devices capable of working with GLONASS and GPS systems equipped with protection against signal jamming. Such modules are used in a number of high-tech weapons: Iskander M, Caliber, X-101, X-69 aviation glide bombs, the MPK guided glide bombs, in All-Antenn, Lancet drones, and new variation of Shahed type kamikaze drones. This is a high value target potentially, and the Ukrainians are hitting facilities like this every night at the moment, and they're possibly doing a lot more damage than we realize they're doing, because not all hits are in places that are going to be available for people to view them easily, record them, and whack them up on social media. Ukrainian drones strike Russian defense plant 1,000 kilometers from the border, says Euromaidan Press. Again, reporting on this strike in the Chuvash Republic to a defense contractor that supplies electronic warfare countermeasures for the Russian forces. Then This is interesting. So Andrew Perpetua says, well, he's quoting or he's exerting the Russian claim. The Ukrainian armed forces attempted to attack an enterprise in the Cheboksary Republic with drones. That was reported by the head of the region. To which Andrew says, attempted? And then we've literally got the place blowing up with drones slamming into it. I mean, it's just fantastic when you can actually see what the Russian PR is and then what the reality is. Just 100%. Like, this is the Progress plant. You can see drones literally fly into it and explode. It is majorly on fire. And we have the Ukrainian forces attempted to attack. They succeeded in attacking it. Then we're going on to somewhere else. So according to local media, a paint and varnish workshop, and not for the first time, paint and varnish workshops. I talked about this the other day. Like, why are so many paint and varnish workshops blowing up and factories blowing up or on fire? And it could be that these are actually producing composites for the military, whether it be actual paint for military vehicles. You can have like radar reflective paint and all sorts of things like that, or whatnot, producing chemicals, I don't know, that are going to be used in military manufacturing. But there seems to be a lot of scare quotes. I don't know if scare quotes is the right thing, whether they are genuinely paint and varnish workshops. So anyway, according to local media, paint and varnish workshop has caught fire. Residents report thick black smoke and sounds resembling explosions, and this is in Kazan. Now, later reports are coming out to say it is actually a gunpowder factory, and of course that's going to be incredibly significant if it is. Locals say a paint warehouse in Kazan is on fire after all. And then, you've got some significant clouds and fire happening in this Kazan facility. So another huge fire going on there. But no report says more from Kazan. Preliminary reports indicate that a gunpowder factory might be on fire, but needs further verification. So it could actually be a gunpowder factory. And Visioner says, big news, Ukrainian forces have struck the Kazan gunpowder plant. Facility is one of the most critical enterprises in Russia's military-industrial complex, producing gunpowder and warheads for artillery and missiles, including the Kalibr and Iskander-M systems. So again, if that's true, again we have another facility involved in manufacturing of these missiles. So not only in the Cheboksary Republic, but here in Kazan as well. Massive fires at both places. Then we have a freight locomotive in the Saratov region, very much on fire, seems to have been struck there by something, a bit of targeting of the railway logistics, it appears. And then we have Tochny releasing an article, and I'll probably find some time to go through this. I'd love to get Erland and or Daniela on from Tochny to speak about this article. I probably should do that this week. This is Operation Spiderweb. I'm very quickly just going to give some of the headlines here as they, went to town on analysing what happened. The drones were piloted remotely via radio-based stations positioned near the airfields. These stations used Russia's own 4G LTE network to maintain comms with operators safely located in their headquarters in Ukraine. In other words, they're flying them using mobile phone coverage really from the local area. Confirmed hits include 7 Tu-95 bombers, 4 Tu-22 strike aircraft, 1 AN-12, 2 A-50s, 25 total aircraft attacked across Olenia, Balaya, Dyagilevo and Ivanovo, a catastrophic loss for Russian strategic aviation. So they are saying 25 total aircraft were attacked. So here we've got destroyed, excavator clearing the burnt debris can be seen there, and more destroyed equipment, destroyed. So that they are going with a fine-tooth comb over these satellite images. 25 total aircraft was broadly what I was saying myself. The use of linear-shaped charge warheads embody a calibrated strategy, one demonstrating high-value precision targeting, severing aircraft fuselage, superstructure or fuel tanks cleanly and making them inoperable without using conventional long-range munitions. So we'll have to go through that article in due course. Right, moving on to other bits and pieces. So we're going to go to a Chris Wiki thread. Russian soldiers are face being sent to their deaths if they appeal publicly for volunteer aid, according to Russian war bloggers. Now, this is something that the Ukrainian forces do absolutely openly and with the full support of the armed forces. Ukrainian armed forces are like, yeah, get as much stuff as you can. They have their own PR setups and networks of, well, it's just the units are so used to publicly appealing for equipment that charities hook up with units to do that. You know, Jiggers, whether it be Jiggers Port or Car for Ukraine or NAFO, like these, it's just absolutely the done thing in Ukraine, and no one bats an eyelid anymore. It's like, we can argue that the central government should be supplying everything, but actually you can get an advantage from this way of doing things as well as getting central government supplying stuff, because you get a reactivity that you can only get through units knowing what they need, going straight to the manufacturers of the stuff and saying, we need exactly this, rather than having to wait to be given stuff by central government. It's just, this is arguably a more, well, you need both, right? But it is definitely a good way of getting what you need as quickly as possible. Now, the Russians here are appearing to punish Russian soldiers. They face being sent to their deaths if they appeal publicly for volunteer aid. This is the exact opposite. Commanders regard it as reflecting badly on the Russian army, forcing aid appeals to be made anonymously. Even so, much of the aid is still stolen. Both sides in the Ukraine war rely heavily on humanitarian aid provided by volunteers and fundraisers for everything from clothes to medicines to drones to trench equipment. However, whereas it's done openly in Ukraine, Russians have to do it secretly. Romanov Light writes, most of the volunteers I know delivering aid specifically to fighters and not to high-ranking commanders for sale are forced to hide which specific unit the aid is being transferred to, because otherwise their superiors immediately find them and begin to repress them for turning to volunteers. This is effed, of course. We need everything and everyone. Our requests are, without frills, are really what is needed to survive and complete tasks in this war. And all the requests have one thing in common. The fighters cannot make official requests, because if someone sticks their head out, they will immediately go on a one-way assault, because then the question will arise regarding the commander. Why didn't he provide? And it is easier for the commander to zero out and get new men than to be responsible for the lack of support or to organise this very support. Andrei Sukonkin corroborates this, quote, that is why I stopped working with units a long time ago. Now aid is sent only to specific people, most of whom are commanders who are able to properly and fairly manage the goods provided. However, also because the absolute majority of cases, aid sent to units without an address was not properly appreciated by the recipients. They treated it as if, having lost it, there is a more capacious definition in the army, but I cannot reproduce this definition within the framework of this channel. I will give them new aid tomorrow. Mostly they did not even say thank you. And I practically don't hold collections on the channel anymore. I can't remember off the top of my head when I last did it. It often happens that you do for good for people, but in the end you end up feeling guilty about something, listening to dissatisfaction that they say you sent the wrong colour socks. Plus, I know a huge number of stories when valiant, heroic defenders resold humanitarian aid without even unpacking it, or stole for sale, for example, all the drones in the unit at once, leaving their comrades in arms without eyes. Of course, everyone will get what they deserve, but aren't such thieves ashamed of their actions in front of their comrades in arms? Oh, no, they're not ashamed. Dmitry Steshin asks, did you know that some officers, I can't tell them officers, are jealous of humanitarian aid that is delivered to their units, especially if the fact of delivery is later made public, and they really don't like targeted delivery from hand to hand. Guess why? Then you can't sell this humanitarian aid, especially complex electronic products. And some smart humanitarians say just that. I registered a Jeep in my name. If it disappears from the front, I'll immediately put it on the wanted list. Can you imagine what a scoundrel he is? There is another type of comrades in pants and shoulder straps who don't like humanitarian aid because it directly indicates what was stolen. Quote, I remember receiving an award for my book, Sacred Military Operation, and spent about half the amount on simple medical equipment. I brought everything from the list of doctors from the evacuation trucks from the Bakhmut direction and brought it to the medical battalion. So after me, the special services arrived there to sort things out. What then? They still gave it to the medical battalion. Where did it go? The cherry on top was a conversation with an old friend, a career military man. He said in a benevolent tone, well, what do you want from them? It was like this in all wars. Salaries in peacetimes are small. You need to have time to earn, steal, for housing, for the future, for the children. Do you understand that a lot of people have been killed because of this? Do you understand that even original conflicts can be ripped off this way? No, you don't understand. Salaries are small in peacetime. You need to have time to earn what you're going to earn while the war is going on. It's normal. It's always been like this, etc., etc. So you just, yeah, that's what's going on in Russia. Whereas in Ukraine, you know, again, part of this might be to do with the, I say again, because I've said this to you a number of times, the difference between why each side is fighting. So Ukraine, you are fighting for the existence of your country, of your identity, of your family, of your friends, right? If you don't do this, Ukraine will collapse and everything you know will collapse. So there is going to be less incentive for you to like be individually profiteering off the war. Now you will get that. There will be corrupt people in Ukraine, of course. But generally speaking, people are going to be pulling together because you're fighting like for the future of your entire everything. But for the Russians, like if they don't win in Ukraine, it's not the existence of Russia that is on the line. I mean, you can argue that politically Russia might collapse if it all fails in Ukraine, but there's not that existential connection in the way it is with Ukraine. Like these are the invaders coming into Ukraine. You know, worse for them, they might get beaten back and their war stopped and their unit goes home back to Russia. But the Russian borders still exist. The Russian people still exist. And, you know, the culture and the buildings and everything, they still exist. But that's not the same for the Ukrainians. So the Russians are going to be thinking, oh, I've got a bunch of stuff. I'm going to make some money out of it because, hey, I don't really care. Like, I'm not fighting for the existence of me, my family, my friends, and my identity, my culture. So they will feel, I think, more able to take the piss. And I'm pretty sure that will underwrite some of the differences there between the sides. Now, after being exchanged, a Ukrainian prisoner of war showed his body covered in multiple mutilations and a burned-in inscription that read, "Glory to Russia." So they have, I mean, look what they've done to this guy. It's just, it's appalling, isn't it? But yeah, glory to Russia. He has had scarred into his abdomen. Just absolutely shocking. I went a bit nuts on this earlier. I just can't believe this. So in fact, here it is. These people have been invited by Alexander Dugin, the genocide advocating ultranationalist philosopher whose ideology underwrites Putin's thinking, and the Tsargrad Institute, which is a horrific bunch of, whatever. So this is a forum in Moscow where, who have they got speaking? Sergei Lavrov, of course, foreign minister. Elon Musk, so Elon Musk's dad. George Galloway, the numbnut politician from the UK. You've got Jeffrey Sachs, the political realist, who effectively is like, oh, the war was NATO's fault for expanding, etc., etc. You're like, if this doesn't give you permission to dismiss what this guy says, like, he is obviously a Russian simp. Alex Jones turning up to speak here. This is just appalling. These people, Conservative Group Deputy Leader Matthew Groves, Max Blumenthal. Anyway, just this is not cool. I would argue. So these people, I would just, I'd say just dismiss them out of hand now. Jeffrey Sachs is hanging out with Alex Jones and Elon Musk and Sergei Lavrov. I mean, that tells you which side his bread is buttered. Now, Prune60 says, I was looking at the numbers again and I'm starting to wonder if loading is going to drop into the 80s for June. What's he talking about? This is Russian railways loading, whereby it's looking very bad. So this is 2025, the black line there. So loading is just how much they load onto trains. And the Russian economy is a railway economy. This is definitely not good news for Russia's economy, to not have this amount of economic activity passing over the railway infrastructure, passing through the railway infrastructure. It is hugely down on previous years. And so he goes through the stats and hypothetically looks at where it is going, looking at the numbers and what's going on with some of those, like the coal industry and whatnot, that uses the rail network. So he says a drop below 3 would be possible. Breaking 2.8 would be too good to be true. I mean, I don't know what these numbers refer to exactly, but the point being that Prune 60 is and others are getting pretty excited about how things are collapsing in the Russian, in this case, railway networks, but in the Russian economy more generally. Anyway, that's enough from me. Thank you for listening. It's been another long one. So much going on at the moment in the war. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon. Toodle pips.